All right, guys, welcome back to another episode Up and Running. Thanks for watching. All right, on today's episode, I was thinking about this. I just saw some stuff about this recently, and the question was raised, can you drive a classic muscle car on a daily basis? Does that work? Can you do it? Is it realistic? You know, that kind of thing. So I thought I'm going to interject a little bit of my own 2 cents into this, and you know, you guys can make your own decision. So here we go. So I think the best way to do this is to you know, tell the story of where the Super Bee came from, you know, what I did with it, what happened with it, you know, those types of things. And to, you know, I think that'll help answer the question of, you know, can you drive a car like this every day? So basically, here's the scoop on where this car came from. I found this car in a barn a whole bunch of years ago, and it had been sitting in that barn for 26 years at that point, and it was not going to start for anything. The motor was locked up. I mean, it was in horrifically rough shape. So what I did is I set up a goal of, okay, what do I want this car to be? What do I want to do with it? You know, how much money do I want to spend on it? What do I want when I'm done? You know, that was really the answer to this, is what do I want when I'm done? And the answer was, I want a car that I can get into at any time, drive it, enjoy it, have fun with it. I didn't want a car that I had to do a ton of work on all the time. And, you know, I just wanted something that I was going to be able to enjoy for years to come. So what I decided I needed to do, because the car was in such rough shape when I got it, was I needed to completely disassemble this car and, you know, basically touch every component in it and make it so, you know, you could daily drive this car. So what I did with it was I took it completely apart and, you know, basically figured out what I wanted to happen with it, you know, kind of evaluate what it needed, what the scoop was with it. And what I determined was it needed everything. So I basically decided, well, I am going to do everything on it then to meet my goal. So I started working on every aspect of the car. I redid all the wiring on it. You know, I did all the weather component, or the rubber components in the suspension, and, you know, I mean, I touched every bit of this car. The engine was rebuilt, the transmission was rebuilt, the rear end was rebuilt, and when I was all done, it turned out it was about 2 months worth of you know, messing around with it, getting all the little bugs out of it, and things along those lines. But at that point, I felt like I had a pretty good car, and you know, it was something that was going to be reliable and I could drive on a regular basis. So that being said, there was actually a time when I daily drove this car every day. The only exception to me was because of the condition of the vinyl top and you know, the roof in general, I decided not to drive it on, like, you know, bad weather days. You know, I really wanted to you know, preserve it the way it was and keep it you know, in its original form. But I always thought, you know, one day I could definitely redo everything, and you know, but up until that point, I wanted to make it so you know, I could just enjoy it. So I drove this car every day, and it worked out great for me. It was a real reliable car. You know, I enjoyed driving it every day, and it was a lot of fun. You know, then came the problem of, okay, one day I ran into an issue with it, and, you know, it took me a long time to find the part. You know, so the car was down for quite a few days. It was probably down for, you know, like a good solid week. And, you know, so if this would have been my only car, you know, that would have been a problem. the reality too is a lot of the aftermarket parts are garbage and they may not work the first time around. But the car was down for about a week while I waited on the part. So, right there, that tells you that you can't have this as your only car. If this were a Chevy of some sort, a real popular Chevy like an El Camino or a Chevelle or something like that, you may not run into those issues. It probably all depends on exactly what's going on with it, but so it's going to kind of depend on what kind of car it is. This being a Mopar, the parts are not quite as common, and so you may run into some issues with it. Alright, so another great example that I can come up with is one time I had the brake booster and the radiator essentially fail at the exact same time. And I had to, I looked around a lot and I was trying to find another brake booster, but what I ended up doing was sending the brake booster off to have it rebuilt. I just didn't feel like any of the other options were good quality options, and I didn't want to, shortcut it. So I ended up having to send it off to, I think it was Washington State, to have it rebuilt. So the brake booster was gone for a couple of weeks at that point, and the radiator was also at the radiator shop getting re-cored. I can't remember if it was exactly the same time but it was really close, and so the car was down for a little bit at that time as well. So that's another example of a situation where I could have maybe stuck a different brake booster in it, or something along those lines, but the car was down for a little bit, so it would have been another situation where I needed another car. Again, you probably would have been way better off with a more popular car, something that wasn't, I don't want to say like high-end performance or anything like that, but something where you don't mind just sticking whatever you have laying around into the car. So that may be an old Ford LTD or a Mustang or something like that. The parts would be more readily available for it. So you may be able to get away with something like that a little more. So the bottom line is, when I was driving this car every day, I had really good luck with it. It didn't give me any issues that I wasn't able to take care of in a quick time frame, something where I couldn't drive the car every day. So in that respect, I lucked out, and it worked great. Because I had gone through the entire car at the beginning, I did everything. I spent a ton of money on it. I was able to drive this car for, like 10 years. It was actually even, I think, 11 years before I had a problem with it. So, in that respect, it was great. Now, if you just buy a car that's all done and you just start driving it, you're going to have problems that crop up all the time. In that respect, with newer cars, you have the same issue where, things come up and you just have to deal with it. So, my thought is, you could drive an old car every day. It would not hurt to have a backup car. Just in my everyday life, I've got, an extra car or two all the time. So if something does come up, it's not such a huge inconvenience for me, to be without the car. I can get by. I just drive a different car that day. So, trying to think of some other things that that I could think of as to why you could or couldn't drive an old car every day. The bottom line is, these cars were driven every day back when they were new, so there's no reason they can't be as reliable now as they were back then. The reality back then, though, is you did have things come up and you had to deal with them. Now, parts were a little more available, so it wasn't as big a deal that way. Now, you can keep parts in stock, for some of the more common problems, some things that, might, make it so you couldn't drive it to work one day or whatever the case may be. All right, something else to think about with driving an old car every day You know, like you can't go to the gas station without spending 15 minutes talking to somebody about the car. You know, so you got to be prepared for that. You know, if you take your old car to Walmart, you got to be prepared to get a door ding or something like that. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've come out and somebody's been parked right next to me, or you know the drill. You know, that type of thing. But I dealt with that. Like I say, I drove it every day and enjoyed it. Another thing to think about is if the car that you choose to drive all the time has like really hard or rare, or, you know, pieces of trim that are really super nice originals, you know, things like that. You got to be prepared that something could happen to them. I had a 66 Impala Super Sport. It was a big block 4-speed car, had a ton of options, and the trim on that car was original and it was immaculate. And you know, I was scared to drive that car anywhere for fear something would happen to that trim. You know, it's like, for example, the rear quarter trim on that car. At the time I had it, I looked and looked and looked for spare trim, and I couldn't find any that was in good shape. And at that time, it was not reproduced. So, you know, I had to think about things like that. That might be a case where driving a lower model, you know, would be of an advantage to you, you know, versus driving a high-end model, or, you know, something that had components on it that were, you know, basically impossible to find. So another thing to think about is tires. A lot of the classic cars take like 14 or 15 inch tires. Some of them even take 13s for that matter. Nowadays, those are getting harder to find, and it's not that they necessarily, you know, can't get them. They may just have to order them. You know, a lot of places don't stock them anymore, and it might be a day or two for them to get tires. So that's just another thing you want to think about. There's a ton of things like that on old cars that are, you know. Oh, another one is wiper blades, for example. I think the ones on my Super B are 15-inch long wiper blades, and most places don't stock those anymore either. You have to order them, you know, online, or, you know, sometimes you can keep a roll of that wiper blade material on hand and you'd be able to make your own. But you know, it's just another thing that you got to think about. You know, so basically, I guess in summary, is you have to think about what your current daily driver goes through on a daily basis, and figure out what, you know, classic car or old car you want to drive that you're willing to put that through on a daily basis, because it will go through the same thing. You know, so that way you can, you know, be sure you pick the car that'll suit all your needs and is everything you want. You know, if you haul a lot of stuff, for example, on a regular basis, you probably don't want to pick a Corvette just because there's no room in it. You know, so you want to think about things like that. You know, if it's like, if you haul stuff, if you drive a pickup truck now, you probably want to drive an old pickup truck. So those are just some of the things to think about. Again, the availability of parts. Do you have time and the ability to fix things quickly at night? You know, if something little comes up, you know, are you able to take care of it at night, you know, so you can drive it to work the next day? You know, is it going to cause you a huge headache? So you got to think about all those things. So, you know, in the end, I hope this helped you. Gives you some things to think about if you want to drive a classic car on a daily basis. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode Up and Running. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, ring the bell right next to it for your notifications, and click the like button. Thanks for watching.